Sometimes that wasn't easy. The perfect widow wasn't exactly something she'd aspired to be. The local high school boys were especially in awe of her, and it wasn't just due to her dead husband's heroics on the football and battlefields. Laurie was cute, with auburn hair and a buxom figure. Laurie thought she was a bit too buxom. She still hadn't completely shed the extra baby weight, and working in a kitchen didn't help. At the moment, she would have welcomed a familiar face or two. These last few lonely minutes before closing were sometimes a bit unnerving. There was always the chance of a stranger wandering in there, a stranger who might want to cause trouble or rob the place. Laurie wasn't usually this paranoid, but 6 nights ago, only 30 miles away at Patty's Pantry off Highway 82 near Yakima, a waitress and a cook had been viciously beaten by a pair of armed robbers. It had occurred just minutes before closing. The gunmen had emptied out the registers, stealing close to $700. They'd also made the waitress, cook, and a busboy surrender their wallets. Laurie had followed the story closely. The waitress and cook resisted. She ended up with a black eye and a split lip. The cook spent 3 days in the hospital having his broken jaw wired. Their attackers were still at large. Patty's Pantry had surveillance cameras. Blurry shots of the perpetrators were printed in the newspaper and distributed to several restaurants in the area. The photos were plastered in the break room at the Superstar Diner. Laurie thought it was pretty ridiculous that they were expected to recognize the assailants from those fuzzy snapshots. Both men had medium builds and dark hair. One looked pale, and the other might have been Latino. That was all she had to go on. The descriptions from the waitress, cook, and busboy could have fit half the men who had walked into the Superstar Diner tonight. My Sharona was churning over the jukebox, Laurie's selection. That thump, thump, thump rhythm always helped revive her at the end of a long day on her feet. Walking on Sunshine was another song selection that re-energized her near closing. Both tunes were probably brand new when Paul had last changed the jukebox selections. Duncan had already brought in the sandwich board sign from the sidewalk by the entrance. He was mopping the kitchen floor, always his last chore for the night. As she wiped down the counter with Windex and a sponge, Laurie prayed no last-minute customers would show up. In just a few minutes, she could lock the door and hang up the closed sign. She was hoping to get out of there by 11:15. She was about to pull the keys from the pocket of her waitress uniform when the man strutted through the doorway. Laurie hadn't noticed a car pull into the parking lot. She couldn't help wondering if the guy had switched off his headlights as he'd approached the diner. But why would he do that? Was it because he didn't want anyone identifying his car later? Laurie felt dread in the pit of her stomach. She put down the sponge and nervously wiped her hands on her apron. She tried not to stare at the man. Dark hair, pale complexion, medium build. She guessed he was about 30. He looked unwashed, with his 5 o'clock shadow and greasy, unkempt black hair. Still, he was sort of sexy in a strange, dangerous kind of way. Maybe it was the unabashed, flirtatious grin on his face as his dark eyes met hers. He seemed so smug. Any other time she might have been amused, maybe even slightly intrigued, despite herself. But not now. Please, she thought, just order a Coke to go. Take it and get out of here. Hell, she wouldn't even charge him for it if that was all he wanted. The camouflage pattern army fatigue jacket he wore seemed too big for his frame. With a grunt, he plopped down on one of the middle stools. Then he began to slap his hands on the countertop, keeping time with My Sharona. Laurie worked up a smile and handed him the grill menu, which thankfully got him to stop pounding on the counter. "We're about ready to close," she said over the